Good morning. We are in Kuf Mem Aleph, Sif Ches, and we're still talking about Hilchos Avodas Kochavim, specifically of the Lav of Lo Sasun Iti, and making images or making things that are in Hashem's abode, generally meaning in space. So the Issa to make forms of planets or stars or the moon. And now in Sifches, we're talking about the Modar Tachton in Hashem's, instead of comparing to the celestial abode in space, but his earthly abode, the Beis HaMikdash. So Ches talks about Lo Yasa Bayis Tavnis Heichal. You should not make a house in the form that the Heichal had, that the Beis HaMikdash had. Kishir Govho v'Orko v'Rochbo, at the same height, length, and width. Mashma, that it's okay to make it in the same comparative dimensions. You can make a house that is the same comparative dimensions as long as it's not exactly the number of amos in each of the dimensions. Achsadra tavnis ulam. It's also to make an achsadra in the form of the ulam. Now, achsadra is typically a portico, a porch, right? And so it's typically something that has three walls. And the Shach asked the question, you can't make a three-walled porch in the same form as the ulam. The ulam had four walls. The ulam was the entranceway to the Heichal. We call the Beis HaMikdash Ariel because it's in the shape of a lion. In what way? That the ulam is wider than the Heichal was. So it was an entrance which had it was an entranceway that had a very large doorway. So because it had such a large doorway, it felt like it only had three walls, even though it in actuality had four. That's why we can't make an achsadra, even though it only has three walls. But the Ariel, the ulam, felt like it only had three walls. So, but you can't make it in the same dimensions. Again, you can't make it the same dimensions as the ulam. Chatzer tavnis azara. It's also to make a yard, which would mean, I assume, an enclosed yard, right, with walls, the same sizes as the azara. Shulchan tavnis shulchan. You can't make a table with the same dimensions as the shulchan in the Beis HaMikdash. What? Shulchan tavnis shulchan.
Pattern. Here's the pattern, not size.
We're going to get to where the size matters and where it doesn't. Okay, certainly in the menorah, the size doesn't matter. In the shulchan, it does say the amos, it does say the exact amos. So,
there's no
yeah.
specific need about it.
By the menorah, it doesn't say the meters. We work out by the kaftar and we worked that it was 18 tefachim high, but it's not ma'akiv for the menorah to be of 18 tefachim high. For the shulchan, it gives the actual dimensions. So l'chara, for the shulchan, would have to be the exact same dimensions, not just the relative sizes of width and height and length. Menorah tavnis menorah. It's also to make a menorah in the same form as the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. Aval osa shel chamisha kanim. You can make a menorah of 5 branches, because the one in the Beis HaMikdash was 7. O shel shisha, o shmona, you can make a 6-branched one, or an 8-branched one, which is what we do for Hanukkah. Or a 9-branched one for Hanukkah, because we had the shamash. Abel shel shiva lo yasa, but a 7-branched menorah you should not make. Afilu mishar minei matachos, even if you're making it from other forms of metal. Va'afilu below gaviyim v'kaftarim v'frachim, even if you're not adding the things that were mentioned in the pasuk, that you have to have gaviyim, right? The fluted cups and knops, balls and flowers. Even if the menorah that you make is not 18 tefachim high, because that's not li'ikuv, it's not ma'akev. And that's the rule. Anything that's not ma'akev for its kashrus is not ma'akev for if you make it different. And we say, well, you could make a menorah like the way that you're doing it, and it would be kosher in the Beis HaMikdash. So then it would be usher to make it that way. So I want to point out a few things. First of all, we're saying that the menorah, if it's not made of metal, would be okay. You can make a set. L'chara, it's from everything we see here. You should be allowed to make a 7-branched menorah as long as it's not made out of metal. Now, the Chashmonaim actually made a menorah when they first rebuilt. I mean, we talk about Hanukkah, and we don't realize that the menorah that they used wasn't the menorah. They made a temporary menorah out of shikurim shel barzel, which it's a machlokas tanam as to whether they covered it with wood or they covered it with ba'ats. Is either they covered it ba'ats or ba'ats, which would be like a dill, I don't know, some other kind of cheaper metal. But if you don't make it out of metal, it's not kosher. Now, you would think that this whole sif is talking about that the same way that you're not allowed to make the Shemen HaMishcha or the Ketoras, you can't use the same formula to make private stuff. It's a law. You would think that this is what's playing out here. This is not the reason for it. It's only said about those things that the pasuk says about. Here, it's because of lo sasun iti, the madar tachton. You can't make things that Hashem has in His abode. So now the question then becomes, why do we only have the items that are mentioned in the sif? The big question is what happened to the Aruch, right? If we're saying you can't make things that are in Hashem's house, well, the Aruch, which houses the Kruvim, can you make a chest of the exact same dimensions as the Aruch? And it's not listed here, and I don't know why. The other things, the other items that you might want to ask about, the Mizbachos, so the Mizbeach HaChitzon, it wasn't in the Beis HaMikdash, so it could be that anything outside of the Beis HaMikdash and the Ulam itself would not be included. So maybe you can make a chutzah the same size. Oh no, it says about the Azara, so that's a question. Why would we include the Azara, but not let's say the Kior? It doesn't say anything about you can't make a Kior. I don't know why. But certainly the Aron HaKodesh, can you make something the exact same dimensions? Unclear. It talks about, can you make a menorah that's in the shape of a circle or a square or a triangle? And I would assume that it's talking about like in the overall shape, in the same plane as a menorah. Like, let's say my body is the guf of the menorah, my arms are out like this, right? So I don't think it means as to whether it's square or curved, the arms themselves. I don't think that matters. This is machlokas as to whether were they straight, were they curved. I think it's more like the overall shape would look like a circle. The menorah altogether would look like a circle. Like you have the outer ones being smaller in size than the other ones. Or if you had them straight on the bottom, then their heights going up would be different. So you'd have a square shape or a circle shape overall of the menorah. He says none of the Nasikelim, the Shacham Natah said none of that is le'ikuva, so none of that would matter. So if you see an artist with, he changed the shape, it doesn't look like a standard menorah, it's now in a triangle form, it's in a circular form, none of that would matter. It would still be usher if it has 7 branches and if it's made out of metal. Okay, Kuf Mem Beis, Sha'alilam v'tashmishem asurim b'hana.
Silver and clay, since it's not the materials that are mentioned in the Torah?
The materials are said by the menorah, by the Shulchan. Would it be a problem if it was just plain wood? Right. If you didn't have the tzipui zav, I'm not sure. I don't remember. If anyone talked about that. Kuf Mem Beis, Sha'alilam v'tashmishem asurim b'hana. So idols, and we talked about the tashmishan and the noyan and all things associated, things that belong to the idol, right? So they are asabana. We've already established that. But now we're going to see situations where some things are not asabana, but what does it mean for something to be asabana? How can you use it and still be over on that? So let's see. Kishem sha'alilam asurim b'hana, aleph. Kishem sha'alilam asurim b'hana, just like the idol itself is asabana, kach kol hanas habas mimena asurus. Also, asabana is any hana that you would get from using the idol, or its tashmishin. Afilu im sarfa, even if you burnt it. Now, the Nosikelim talk about who's burning it. If the guy burns it, so then he is breaking it biyadayim, right? So that's not the case. It can't be that the guy is saying, "Oh, this is not an idol anymore. I'm going to use it for firewood," or the firewood that belonged to the elil, I'm going to use it. So then he's being mevatel. A Jew can't be mevatel an elil. So it has to be either that the Jew got it from the guy and then the Jew is burning it, or the guy is also burning, but he wasn't mevatel it, or a fire fell onto it, something along those lines. But it has to be that the guy is not burning it biyadayim, because then he would be mevatel it, and then it would no longer be an elul, it would no longer be a sabana. So afilu im sarfa asel henes b'gachalta. Even if someone burns the idol itself or the wood that belongs to the idol, so you can't have enough from the coals that are from that wood. The afra, or after it got completely burnt, you can't use those ashes. Those ashes are also asabana. You can have hana from the flame that comes from it. So you'd have to have a situation where it's just flame. We're going to see later about flames that are connected to the gechelas. There's a number of things that are taking place here. So, and for this whole simon, we have to get a few things straight. So, generally, anything which is asur b'hana, and we're going to see that later sifim, the way that they're brought in the Gemara is really about orla. Orla is also asur b'hana. But there's an added isser when it comes to elilim, because when it says by Ir Hanidachas, where an entire city serves avodah zarah. So it says, Lo sidbak biyadcha ma'uma. Don't keep anything from there. So that's an extra level which plays into this whole simon. So normally we say that a shalheves is itself ein bo mamish. So lo sidbak biyadcha ma'uma would apply to anything left over from that. So the coals that's a physical thing, so that's asur. But the flames that are shooting out from something burning, you could cook by that, because the flames themselves ain't bo mamish. You'd have to find a situation where there's flames, but you're not using the coal that it's coming out from.
Yeah.
But then, l'chayim. So we're saying that the flames itself is mother because ain't bo mamish. So when another thing I'd like to point out, also in the previous sif. So in the previous sif, we were talking about don't make a house, don't make a menorah, don't make these things. What if someone else made it? What if a guy made it and now can you use it? It seems it was the mashmos of that you could be allowed to use it. All right, that if you were given a 7-branch menorah by a guy, at least the losas and iti wouldn't be there. But then the issue of chashad does come into play, because maybe someone would be choshed that maybe you made it. We're seeing here that also comes into play, that even when something is not necessarily asur b'hana, but someone gave it to you, would you still have chashad when it comes to elilim? Let's see, sif base. Sakin shalalim sheshachad ba. If you shechted with a knife that belonged to an idol, to an avodah zarah, so hareza mutar. So the shechita that you did with the knife doesn't asur. It's not considered that you had an why. Hareza mutar v'neishim makalkel, because it's considered the shechita is generally makalkel. And this is an interesting idea, because a live animal has 3 benefits more so than a dead animal. A live animal, it can still raise other livestock, right? Once it's dead, it can't. A live animal, you could eat it. And we're going to get to that. And the live animal, you can do work. You can do work with it. So by slaughtering an animal, it's no longer alive, so that's considered makalkel. Now, it's strange to me, because the eating part, you have to slaughter it in order to eat it. So why regarding that point is it not makalkel? But this is how it's brought, that is considered makalkel, and therefore the animal that you shechted would not be asur, right? You're not having hana from the knife of avodah zarah. But let's see what he says here. V'masakin chadash, if it's a new knife, oh yashin delibno, or it's an older knife, but you did liban on it to get all of the giulim out of it. Mi'isa shabo, afilu chadchila mutter. Then not only is it mutter if you did it, which is the mashmas of all of these sifim, that if you did it, it's the resulting is mutter, but you shouldn't do it lachatchila. Here he's saying that if it's a brand new knife, it would be mutter lachatchila. Now the Nosikalim talk about what do you mean a brand new knife? If it's a brand new knife, then we learned earlier, previous simanim, that it doesn't even become tashmishe avodas elilim unless it was actually used at least once. So we have to say that when we talk about sakan chadash, that you used it to slice wood. It means that it wasn't used on an animal, so it was new regarding that, but not actually brand new that never used, because then it wouldn't be considered tashmisha. So now we're talking about just the aspect of it being tashmishe avodas elilim. If it was actually shachted, so then the food wouldn't be mutter. It would be treif. You use a knife on a non-kosher animal, and then use it on a kosher animal that would not be a kosher shechita. The food would not be kosher. So we get around that part by either doing hagala or was never used on another animal. But just because of tashmishe avodas kachavim, it would not be, shechita is considered kilkel. B'mhaisa behema musukenes. However, if the animal was about to die, and we learned earlier about treifa, so it's not a treifa, it's about to die through old age, but it doesn't have a puncture in its lung or anything like that. But it's old and it's about to die. So you're shachting it so that it doesn't die. So then harezu asura, then the entire animal is asur mipnei shu misakin, because the shechita that you did rescued this animal from being unusable, from being completely dead. So then using that sakin, using that knife is considered a misakin, and then you're using the tashmish avodas kachavim, and then the result of it is asur. So then that would be asur. It would also be asur to use this knife not for shechita, but for chopping up meat after shechita. That's clearly a misakin. So that would make the meat asur. However, even if you chopped up meat in a way which was hefsed and hashkasa, for example, you were going to give a fancy present to somebody, and the meat was on a platter in a very beautiful way, and then you ruined it by hacking it. So then that would not make the meat asur, because that would be a kilkel. But in general, slicing meat would be considered, a use, and having enough from tashmisha avodas kachavim would make the thing asur. Now, the Nosikalim go a lot into this whole unit that we're learning, that it's mashal that the entire thing becomes asur, and you would not be able to fix it by just selling this meat and giving the hana that you got from slicing it, just giving zorko liyam or selling it to a guy, except for that. Right? That seems like that's not a way out here. And the Shulchan Taz, really go to town on the mechaber here.
Is this the Raisa we're talking about? The Hana from the knife?
Well, Sidbak b'yadcha ma'uma is so any hana makes it asur. But we're going to see that there are situations where you can just zorkol yam. So let's read it. Not only mena.
What are the Shulchan Taz said about this mechaber?
It's really this whole unit. It's the finer points that get it regarding this point, and hopefully we'll have time to get to it. Gimel, not only mena karker. If you took a splinter, you took a piece of wood from the eitzim that belonged to an idol, or straight from the idol itself. Pirish eitzo etzem sharosh chad b'shoftim bo habeged. It's a needle-like piece of wood or bone that you use to help while weaving. While weaving, you have some threads that go up and some threads that go down, and then you throw the shuttlecock in between them, and that makes an up and down weaving. So you use this needle-like piece of wood to raise or to separate out the upper threads from the lower threads. And you're doing that on every stitch, it seems. So you're using this piece of wood or bone, and you use it to weave on every stitch. Asabana. So then that entire beged becomes asabana. Now here's what we were talking about before. This is what I alluded to before. If this beged that you weaved all together with the help of this thing which is asabana got mixed in with other begadim, then you can sell the entire, 1,000 of them, however it was mixed up into. You can sell them to a guy, but the value of that one beged you have to throw into the Yam HaMelech, all of the other begadim are mutar. It's on this point really that there's a machlokes shak and taz. Daled, not mimena eitzim asura b'hana. Hisik behem esatana ben chadash ben yashan yutzan. Let's say you used eitzim that belong to the idol and you use it to fire up an oven. So the Machaber says ben chadash ben yashan yutzan. Whether it's a brand new oven or an oven that was used before, the only thing you have to do is wait for it to cool down. You can't cook, you're not allowed to cook while it's still hot from the heat of that wood, which is asa. And after it cools down, then you can heat it up again with other wood, with motor wood, and then do your cooking, which is a chiddush, because the Gemara that is quoted says, the Gemara that this is all based on, which is talking about Arla, which is also Bahana, but doesn't have the added Isser of Lo Sidbak B'Yadcha Ma'uma. That doesn't say, it says Chadash Yutatz. If it's a brand new one, you should destroy it. But we end up that's according to Tana that we don't hold like, because that Tana holds, what's the phrase? We're going to come across the phrase in just a bit. Zevizagarim. That Tana holds Zevizagarim as Asr. We pass on Zevizagarim as Mutter. So that's why Bein Chadash, Bein Yashan, whether the fire makes it into something or there's another fire afterwards, the only thing you have to do is just wait for it to cool down. But if you didn't wait for the heat from the first fire to cool down, and you baked bread in that oven, and we have here, according to the base, while the flame is still there, while the wood is still there. Others take that out. They say, the Shulchan Taz say that this isn't necessary. That bod shavuka kenegdo is not necessary. But hareza asabana. So the bread that's baked from the heat from the wood that's asar, the bread itself becomes asar. Because there is there's hana in the bread from the heat of the wood, from the burning of the wood, not from the heat. If that bread got mixed up with other breads, like we saw before, you have to the value of that one bread. You have to not have enough from, throw it into the Yam HaMelech. All the other loaves are mutter. Garaf as kol ha'esh. Now, after you heated it up with this wood that's this asar, you then removed all of the coals. You removed all of the wood. So now it's just the heat. Now you're only baking in the heat of that tanur, or is a mutter. Anything that was baked is mutter, and we're going to be medayik. It's also to do this, but if you did, it would be the resulting bread would be mutter. Because the only thing that's left here is just the heat. There's nothing coming from the eitzim which are aser. That would make the resulting bread mutter. And again, Shulchan Taz have a different take on this. When we talk about Shevach Bapas, Shevach Eitzim Bapas, that's only wood that's Asur B'Hana, like we see, Misham She'ovid Kochavim, or we talked about Orla, or other things that are Asur B'Hana. What if the item that was burned is only Asur B'Achila? Even the flame that's coming off of the thing, and you baked in it, the resulting thing that you baked in it would be mutar. Okay, I think that's it. Have a great day.